Okay. Okay, it's preparing. Okay, I believe we're live. We're on a slight delay. This is the USD 373 bond Q&A. Is everybody hearing an echo? No. Okay. Okay. So welcome. We're going to go through a couple question and answers of common questions we've received regarding the school bond, which would seek to renovate and upgrade USD 373 Santa Fe's 5-6 Center, as well as Lindley Hall, the gymnasium. So we're going to start by hearing from some of the groups that are involved with this. We're going to start by hearing from USD 373 School Board President Mallory Morton.
Good evening. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes this evening to speak from the Board of Education perspective of why we are proposing this specific plan for our bond issue. Over the last year, following the June 2021 storm damage to Lindley Hall, the board asked for investigative work to be done to assess the needs at both Lindley Hall and Santa Fe. And before we move forward with determining a scope of work for the gym facility, we wanted to ensure that Santa Fe 5-6 Center building is structurally sound. Once we found out that yes, it is structurally sound, and we decided to keep the current campus location, we looked at our options for a renovation versus a new build for a gym. Once we considered those options, we determined that moving forward with the renovation for the gym would provide the best bang for our buck. The cost of raising the current gym and building new is 34% higher than renovation. This plan also gets our kids into the gym the fastest, having the shortest construction and completion time. This plan meets all of the needs on that campus, and this gives longevity to our buildings, adding roughly 50 years of additional life, and that fits into the long-term plan for our district. Also, renovating the old gym, the old stage area in the gym, into a new flexible education space will provide a much needed open area for classes and staff and allow for growth in that education setting on the campus. We want to make sure that tax dollars are being spent wisely, and we want to be sure that you know that this is not a Band-Aid fix for the Santa Fe campus, and this bond will serve the district for multiple years to come. Student safety and education are our top priorities, and the board wants to make responsible decisions for our district and community both now and in the future. And we believe that this bond, including renovation and upgrades to Lindley Hall and restoration work at Santa Fe, is the most fiscally responsible way to address current and immediate needs and to allow for future work at other buildings in our district.
Carly, you're muted.
Thank you. We're next going to hear from DLR Gravity Works, who are represented by Vince Haynes, who is the architect for the project. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carly. Thanks, everyone. As Mallory mentioned, once the board decided that the gymnasium, Lindley Hall, was going to be renovated, it was for the reasons that she mentioned, economic as well as speed in construction and getting students back into that space the quickest. Well, the first thing after that was to make double sure that the building was structurally sound. So we spent quite a bit of time combing through the building and drilling some holes in the wall to make sure our assumptions were correct, that Yes, the building is very structurally sound, but it does have exterior wall issues that need to be dealt with. So that's the scope of work at Lindley. Exterior tuck pointing and stabilization for that brick wall, combined with some foundation and some waterproofing stabilization, gets that building back into its, well into the future and its life, adding several years to it. As Mallory said, 50 plus. If the building has lasted this long to go, it certainly got more in it. And then at the same time, taking advantage of the work in there to do, as she had mentioned, the education space on what was once the stage, and then addressing some ADA and other code compliant issues in the building to bring it up to current standards. ADA issues associated with accessibility getting into the front entrance, and also patron viewing for any kind of event that might happen there, and that kind of thing. A new roof will be a part of the scope of work for Lindley due to the type of work that's going to happen to it for stabilization, and a whole new roof will be necessary. Much of the roof will be removed to do the work. So, and then kind of a look ahead or more preventative. It's time to do it at Santa Fe as well. So Santa Fe is not as in as much need as Lindley, but it's certainly there too. So that's the scope of work at Santa Fe, is exterior tuck pointing and maintenance and sealing, and a little bit of other work to deal with some skylights and things like that that are leaking. But that is the general scope of work to do the long-term maintenance to these buildings that pushes them well into the future, and keeps Lindley and keeps Santa Fe in the 5-6 center as a footprint in the Newton schools.
Thank you, Vince. We are next going to hear from Mitch Binns, who is representing McCown Gordon Construction, our construction manager at risk. And Mitch, would you also explain what that means?
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Carly, and thanks for having me this evening. So, a construction manager at risk is a process that we competed on a number of years ago based on fee and cost for our staff, and it allows the builder to be at the table earlier than a traditional design bid build process. So that allows our team combined with Vince's team to analyze scope and come up with the best possible solution for our clients, and in this case the district. So to that point, Vince and our team and team of structural engineers actually did an intrusive investigation and analyzed structures, and this helped us provide costs to actual scope rather than just taking a guess at what the needs are. So we reviewed Lindley Hall, Santa Fe, and Vince's team provided a detailed program which we estimated, presented to the Board of Education. Presented a couple different options, actually, a new construction, as Carly mentioned earlier, as well as renovating the existing buildings. And our job was to look at the cost just to make the building structurally sound, waterproof, and able to get students back in the building. So what we found, the schedule part is a little more simple, so I'll start with that, is renovating the structures allowed the project to be completed a lot earlier, and even started earlier, because we're not waiting on materials. We all know the market's volatile right now, and there's a delay to get some materials. And so we would actually be able to get started with this renovation sooner than a new build, and we'd be able to finish sooner because the scope is less. But we have presented that detailed cost estimate to the Board of Education, and just wanted to mention that cost included a number of things. All the detailed information that Vince mentioned earlier, that ADA upgrades, but waterproofing, the roofing, making sure the building is waterproof below grade, but also above grade where the existing brick is. But we also included costs for Lindley Hall and Santa Fe. We also included, because the market is volatile, we included a significant escalation dollars to make sure that the market doesn't outpace the estimating phase. And but we also included costs for furniture and for technology, AV equipment, the design costs, contingencies for the district to hold to make sure that again they're in a good place, and then presented that range to the Board of Education, and so that's how the costs were developed. Did want to mention that with that construction manager at risk, if the costs exceed the estimated cost that we would provide to the district once the drawings are complete, those costs would be, that burden would be carried by the contractor, us, McCown Gordon, and any savings, 100% of the savings would be returned to the district. So that's some of the benefits of that construction manager at risk delivery method. The last thing I wanted to mention that seemed to be a typical question that we've gotten through other meetings is we would bid out each individual scope to the trades. So our fees are set. They are, they're already set, but we would still bid to the open market for all the concrete work and the masonry work and the electrical work and mechanical work and all the other trades that are involved with the new construction project. I think generally that sums up our job for as the construction manager for this project.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you for touching on some of those items. Those were actually in my frequently asked questions. So you actually answered several of those.
Thanks.
The last person we're going to hear from is Brett Shogren, and he is representing the Stiefel Group, which handles the finances of the bond. Hi, Brett.
Hi, Carly. Thanks for having me here. Yes, my name is Brett Shogren, and I represent Stiefel Public Finance in Wichita. We are financial advisors and underwriters to cities, counties, school districts, etc., to structure and market bond issues for public purpose projects just like this one. We've worked with many school districts and on hundreds of bond issues in Kansas, and we're excited to be part of your project. We feel that now is an opportune and advantageous time to consider a bond issue here in Newton USD 373. It's important to note that we are able to make these improvements and issue $8,435,000 in bonds with no mill levy, bond and interest mill levy or tax rate increase. And many people have asked how this is possible. There are three important factors to make this plan of finance work. One is low interest rates. Rates have been starting to creep upward due to inflation and the Fed raising rates to help fight that inflation. However, interest rates are still lower than the average in several recent decades. We've estimated an interest rate of 4.5%. However, similar bond issues recently have sold at lower rates than that. Number two important factor is the state aid program. In the early 1990s, the legislature started a program in the interest of equity and equality so that less wealthy districts can have the opportunity to build quality facilities like larger, more wealthy districts can. The district's USD 373's existing bonds are eligible and receiving 59% state aid, and these new bonds are eligible for 20% state aid. And what that means is 59% of the existing bond issue payments and 20% of these new bond payments would come from the state of Kansas using taxes collected throughout the state and not having to levy to the local taxpayers. We are estimating this benefit on the new bonds to be nearly $1.9 million. Number three, more important fact, is assessed valuation growth. USD 373 has a growing tax base. It's grown 18.7% in the last decade. And to be conservative in our plan of finance, we estimate only 1% annual tax base growth. Anything over that could result in a lower mill levy. With these three factors, we can design the new bond issue so that the same 11.74 bond and interest mill levy will generate adequate taxes to make the payments on both bond issues without needing to increase the bond and interest mill levy. We estimate the required mill levy to be 11.74 mils until the existing bonds are paid off in 2026. And then the mill levy can be reduced to an estimated 2.86 mils until all bonds are paid off in 2037. We feel like this is a fiscally responsible plan, and we can make major improvements needed at Lindley Hall and to Santa Fe without needing to increase the bond and interest mill levy or the tax rate to local taxpayers. I'm excited to be here and look forward to answering any more of your questions. Thank you.
Brett, thank you for covering those. We're now going to move into some frequently asked questions. Some of these may have an obvious person who needs to answer that particular question, but others might not. So feel free, panelists, to chime in as needed. The first question would probably be best fielded by Superintendent Fred Van Rankin. Superintendent Van Rankin, how have children got by without the use of a gymnasium since June 2021?
Well, we've been very fortunate in that our Recreation Commission has allowed us to use their facilities. It's about 3 blocks south, which is wonderful to have access to that gym for physical education. But you've got to think you're transporting classrooms of 5th and 6th grade students for 3 blocks. You've only got about a 40-minute class period as it is. So by the time you get down there and you get settled in, you might have 20 minutes of physical education class time. So, that's not obviously optimal for our students at all. They do use the outdoors, obviously, a lot rather than going down there when they can. But that too, you don't have the normal physical education types of routines that you would have had in your gymnasium. The wintertime always makes it even tougher, like last year, in terms of trying to get kids back and forth to the rec center with inclement weather and so on. Another point that I kind of want to make about the students not having access to a gym, and I think this almost to me overshadows even the physical education, or is at least of equal importance, is that in that 5th, 6th grade center, they're only there for 2 years. There is no other space large enough to have like even a music concert or assemblies or get to know each other types of opportunities in those large spaces. So not having that gymnasium, it's not just a detriment towards physical education, it also is a detriment towards them being able to build culture. Those kids all come from 5 different attendance centers throughout our district into one, so they don't know each other. And it's really tough for them to be able to develop that positive school culture we want them to, without having that common space where they can get together to have those larger type activities.
Thank you. This next question, if I were to guess, may be touched on by both Mitch and Mallory, and that from the school board perspective was a new build considered?
So yes, from the school board perspective, a new build was considered. We looked through those options, looked at the cost for that. And as I mentioned before, the new build was going to be approximately 34% higher than the renovation of Lindley Hall. So when we looked at all of our needs, both at Santa Fe and Lindley Hall, we determined that moving forward with the renovation would be the most fiscally responsible choice, knowing that we have other needs throughout the district that we'll need to be mindful of in the future.
Yeah, great point. And so as Mallory mentioned, it was that cost was about a third higher, about 34% more. But the only thing I would add is the current space at Lindley Hall is about 17,000 square feet. That estimate was a little bit more efficient space, different layout, but it was only for 14,000 square feet. So even with that new build, it costing more, it would still be less space, which is another reason, if I recall, why the board was more interested in a renovation.
Very good, thank you. Possibly a question for Superintendent Fred Van Rankin again. What is the plan B? If this fails, what are we up against?
Well, the plan B is not attractive. I mean, we have to go back and figure out a way we would continue using the rec center to the best of our ability. And they've been very gracious, as I mentioned earlier. But the Plan B just is not appealing. We don't have a ton of capital outlay space. We're already allotting $1 million of capital outlay towards an HVAC project to address those needs throughout the district. You know, we've talked with the Stiefel group about some capital outlay bond possibly, and some other stuff, but that just taps into really dollars that we need to be using elsewhere. And so, you know, I kind of dance around that question quite a bit, Carly, only because Plan B isn't an attractive one. And there are multiple options, but they're all bad, in my opinion anyway, in terms of being able to serve kids. And also just keep in mind that this is the quickest way to get kids back into a gymnasium too. So Plan B is not an attractive one.
And I would jump in to add that we would need to look at how to finance these improvements in a different manner, because to be fair and equitable to students at Santa Fe, they need to have that space available on that campus. So for example, one other option would be a lease purchase, which is a legal option to move forward with. However, that is not eligible for state aid,
Sure.
as is the general obligation bond, which will be on the ballot November 8th. So if we were to move forward with the Plan B, we could be missing out on up to $1.9 million of state aid. And that is a huge amount that we would be able to use elsewhere in our district should that need arise. So when we looked at all of our options, everything about this option was the most financially responsible choice. It provides our taxpayers a break with that state aid that we would not have otherwise.
Thank you all. Seeing no further questions, I'm going to probably wrap this up. All of the groups that are represented here have provided us with documentation, which is available on USD373.org. We have a whole special bond section of the website that includes a cost breakdown, that includes renderings, that includes mill levy impact for years to come. Anything that you would want to know, we have provided up on that part of the website. I would remind people to go vote. Early voting is now open. Election day, obviously Tuesday, November 8th. And we are the very last question on the end of a long two-sided ballot. So don't forget to check the last question, because that will be the USD 373 bond question. Thank you all for your participation in this Q&A session. This will live on our Facebook page for people to reference. And again, if you have further questions or you want to see something up closer, I would turn you to USD373.org. Thank you all.
Thank you.